Hello,
First,
hello, everybody. What the hell was that? Someone's talking over me. Hello, everybody. Welcome to post chapter discussion on November 3rd. We'll be discussing chapter 8.51. What was the name of this chapter? Interlude. Conversations. It's just conversations. That's all it was. We have some administrative stuff, so let's get through that before anything else. Dado will be helping with the discussion today and running Sunday discussions from now until they don't do anymore. We're still looking for more volunteers to help run and record these post chapter discussions. If you're available, there is a couple of changes to how we're going to do things. So during the discussions, a lot of you're allowed to talk and do whatever you need to do in the general channel. But if you have something in particular you would like me to bring up, or for Dado to bring up specifically, you want to go to the reaction and question chat channel and type the question or particular comment you have. Dado will be monitoring that chat and that channel, and will bring up anything of significance, or if you say something that you want to contribute to the conversation, but because you don't have a mic or you don't want to talk, that's where your questions are going to go.
so make sure you add me,
Yes,
Dado.
make sure you add Dado so he can do it. Yes. Try also, as a corollary to that, please do not type random shit in that channel. Courier, and uh, allow Dado to keep track of it. Yes, just keep that clean of anything except for information. Yes, nonsense goes in the general channel, Asteria. In addition to that, I just want to say, from a personal point of view, thank you so much to everybody for making this so a success, for showing up, for talking, for being polite to each other. Um, it's been an experience learning how to do this and getting the audio properly done. I hope I'm doing an okay job, and I hope you guys are enjoying yourselves. Um, and I hope we can keep this going. There is and we're trying to get the audio up on Reddit. So if anybody knows how to get something like this onto Reddit without having to upload it onto SoundCloud or something, if that's the only way, then that's fine. But uh, cursing does not mean you are impolite. Cursing is just cursing. It can be a part of someone's speech. We became mods, Asteria, by nepotism, essentially. Yes. Um, the Okay, I said my thank you. I'm responding to those who are listening to this audio. I'm responding mostly to people talking in chat because they're being polite and not talking over me. It's very, very cool. Um, and there is one more thing I wanted to say. So I've been reading pirateaba's works for like 2.5, almost 3 years now. I think this year will be my third year reading this web novel. I genuinely believe it is something worth talking about, worth discussing, worth keeping with you. It's starting to creep up in my rank of like Pirateaba is starting to creep up into the rank of writers that I will always remember and talk about all the time. Um, and I've been affected by this work a lot. I enjoy it, and I'm trying my hardest to promote it, to bring it out to more people. And I hope this is one of the things that we as a group can do to bring more people into it. Um, Thank you to everyone again for just showing up and doing this. Okay. If you have any suggestions or ideas about improving or changing how we do things, you can always DM myself or Dado. Give us an idea of what the suggestion is. There's also a feedback channel that you can type in that we're monitoring as well. Um, and we will get right into it in a few seconds. Okay, and to start off, we're going to do a recap of what happens in the chapter. So give me a second, and I'm going to pull up my nice little document with all my information on it. Where the hell is it? Okay. All right. So 8.51 starts off with Viscount Vicificen. We begin with Viscount Vicificen visiting one of the mansions kept by House Soul, I believe, is how it's pronounced.
It's Shoal or Shoal.
Shoal. Yes, that was what someone said to me. Yes, it's House Shoal. When he arrives, we're introduced to another Lucifen standing guard at the entrance. The Viscount then hears from a servant about the death of Sir Tubulus, a Sariant lamb, who is owned by one of the other servants, whose name doesn't matter right now. Lady Godria and Agelum was comforting said servant about the Sariant lamb's death. Vicificen goes to meet with her and discuss Ryoka, and we learn that all the Agelum, who are considered cousins of the Lucifen, were seriously harmed during their fight against Curulac of 100 Days, the Goblin King, before the last one. Vicificen also speaks with another Agelum, and then he vows to maintain his kingdom for Agelum and the Lucifen forever, or until he gets dropped out. During the whole procedure, they all tease him about his behavior with Ryoka and say that they all want to flirt with her as well. It's a very fun, light section. And then we move on to, and I'll preface this by saying we'll address the specifics of what I mentioned later on. The perspective shifts to Risvari, who walks into Ryoka's room, or tries to walk into her room, but is stymied by a locked door, which he promptly breaks, and then walks right in, sees something he shouldn't, and gets thrown out of the room. Well, he leaves the room, while people are throwing helmets and things at him. It's a very interesting scene, and we'll get to it. The chapter then shifts to Mersha, who's having breakfast with Satar, Seres, Vetin, Tessie, and Quira. Satar is a shaman of the Weatherford tribe. Seres is a little Nal child. Vetin and Tessie, we all know, the Cloud Thief, and Tessie the Cloud Thief and the painting guy. I don't know. Quira is, of course, the Golden Nal, fabulousness. She's left alone after a little bit to think over the events of the last chapter while eating bird hash when Geyer pokes her head in. The two girls have breakfast together and make friends. Geyer doesn't want to be famous and is fascinated by the mathematical functions of the calculator on the cell phones. Then the perspective shifts again. We move on to Azkarash, who is symbolically burning his plans for messing with the Nulls and Drakes. Bellavere, curious about it all, joins in for a moment. They talk over Az's plans for Erin's revival. Az is sure that the body has to be in along with her soul. He has different pieces ready, and Bellavere says that he's missing something. She offers to sell Azkarash's soul thread and the needle, and throws in a hat for free as a compliment. The perspective then shifts again, this time to Pawn, who is leading a group of newly born Antinium on a pilgrimage. He's joined on his walk by a faith seeker Seborn. As he walks through the city, he notes the changes that have gone on in Liscor, including the door being moved into into a square where it's being managed by the city. Most notably, there is now a brochure for new arrivals, which there are a lot of, apparently, including farmers and adventurers and just random tourist folk. That help explains how Liscor works, teaches them not to treat the Antinium badly, and, as an aside, also seems to includes a simple line saying, "No killing goblins." Tears in my eyes. We move on to Montressa, who's having a tough time dealing with her expulsion from Winstram. She's been drinking and depressed a lot. She notes that she's drinking and depressed a lot. She notes that as she walks to a meeting scheduled by Bezel, who she continues her business with, and it's pretty successful. And but she's mostly drinking her profits and wallowing in her own self-pity. As she's walking through the city to try to catch up with Bazel before she misses the scheduled meeting, she notes that Silverin has become part of the Cleaners Guild, and Menelet, one of the soldiers who used to visit, retired soldiers who used to visit the inn, has founded Liscor Hunted. She ends up missing her meeting. Bazel is the next POV, and she takes us to Indrisil, where she has a meeting with the mayor about establishing simulation rooms. The mayor is not interested, at least in part because of the loss of Wistram's reputation, and partly because of Lissam. At least, that's what Bazel tells us. She then heads out to see Hedald, who she finds is being harangued by Archmage Valeteresa about selling the expensive wand. I forgot what it's called exactly. The living wood wand, the live wood wand, to her. Valeteresa has a bunch of things she wants to do in Liscor. She heads to the portal door, and when they refuse to let her through, she fakes an emergency through Wistram and just walks right in. There's a small scene break, and we see Jalaqua trying to have sexy time with Moffin, but Moffin is more interested in the adamantium he has been gifted by Pelt. Jalaqua throws a fit because he's being an idiot, and I agree with her. And he immediately reacts and makes it up to her. She herself is really stressed because she's been dealing with the division of the loot from the Village of the Dead and has been trying to keep people from stealing the Helm of Fire out from under the horns. Archmage Valeteresa causes a huge commotion when we switch back to her as she goes to Gary's shop, armed with bound spells, a giant fireball, and sort of in her own way asked to meet with Zern. And she does that by going to Gary's shop, which is apparently a huge success as well. Gary had a free pie out, and she seems to be enjoying the pie, although the cricket was odd. She fails to meet with Zern, but then she heads to the inn to recover the lightning orb that Archmage, the lizard woman, has given to her. Montressa, crying and weeping, follows her along and begs her not to take away the lightning orb and to help her return to Wistram. Valeteresa then tries to enter the Garden of Sanctuary because... Ooh, I'm getting pings. Okay. I'm sorry, I broke that. So she attempts to enter the Garden of Sanctuary, but the garden's barrier blocks her. Ishkar, when she attempts to then use spells to break through, because she promised Eldavin that she would check in and see if she could heal Erin, the Ishkar, who still works there, steps in and stops her. How she stops her is an interesting point as well. How Ishkar stops her is an interesting point as well. Valeteresa then decides to leave because she's of no use and she can't really get any help. But and on the way out, she is begged by Montressa to take her as an apprentice because all she has left is magic. But Valeteresa hasn't decided to do it, but she does think it's a good idea, and she heads out, but is stopped with Liscor's guard and the watch captain. They demand that she float down and be arrested because she's broken a lot of laws. Oh boy, so many laws. And Montressa handles it. Valeteresa, impressed by her, decides to take her up as an apprentice. Montressa gains a apprentice class. At the end of the chapter, we drop in on the former Archmage Amerys, who Trey has finally found and is getting to see. That little tidbit is the last we hear. Okay. Okay, guys and gals. Okay. So we're gonna get into the first impressions. Does anybody want to speak? Just again, ping Dado or myself in the reactions and questions subsection, and we'll get into it. Who wants to go first?
Can I?
Sure, Asteria. This is Asteria?
Go
ahead.
Yeah, this is Asteria. I really love this chapter. My overall reaction was, these slice of life chapters are always super fun. It's great to see all the different perspectives and point of views. I thought it flowed from scene to scene, like actually really well. I noticed that like Pirate is trying to link some of the point of views together, and like one where one would end, it would kind of pick up with a similar topic. And so I appreciated that connections, they're not as abrupt. But one of the things that I really appreciated was I was primarily the one that was complaining a lot about like what I felt were very disjointed scenes in the previous chapter with between Ryoka and the devil. And at the start of the chapter, a lot of that was clarified. And I don't know if like Pirate had planned to do that or just or what, but I really appreciated the clarification because it actually made the scenes from the previous chapter make a lot more sense and flow a lot better for me.
From what I've seen of how Pirate writes, oftentimes they'll, because one of the benefits of this being a web serial is that Pirate oftentimes looks at your reactions to what's happening, reads Reddit, reads the Discord, thinks it over, and if they feel like there is a necessary clarification, they will write it in. So I think that is what happened.
Well, I really appreciated that because I thought it connected everything really well and helped connect Ryoka's character to those scenes for me at least a bit more. So that was like what I really appreciated. But yeah, chapter was super fun and really enjoyed this.
Dado, is there anyone else looking for a reaction?
Yeah, so we have two. So one of them, so Action Kermit, I'm going to do his first because he put it in text. He said, this chapter had a lot of great moments, but it bounced around a lot. It's hard to say what this chapter is about without simply describing what happened blow by blow.
I mean, that's what I did in the recap. Blow by blow. Yep. I mean, it is a very slice of life, alternating perspectives thing. More about a catch-up and a little short breather before we get back into the action, it feels like. Was there anyone else who wanted to speak?
Yeah, so Mr. Europe, it'd be your turn. You said you wanted to react. Mr. Europe?
Yeah. Hello?
Yes.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah. Sorry, my internet got slow for a second. Did I miss it, or did you skip over the Baleros part?
What Baleros part?
The
Baleros part. You're right.
So there was part of the chapter where basically we had the discussion between.
It never happened. That's why I skipped over it. It never happened. We never saw it. Let's talk about it. Go ahead.
So part of my reaction was that this was a great chapter. It was really fun, and I was actually going to say that it was so many fun things happened that we missed the massive, super important lore part in Baleros, and then I realized you hadn't actually mentioned it.
I did not.
And that's how overshadowed it is.
Let me do that now, if you don't mind, Mr. Europe, and then we'll go back to you. So.
Yeah, of course.
Baleros, there was a section about Baleros, and what happens is we drop in on the Featherfolk Brigade and the what was the name of the Quetzal? Yes, the Quetzal who leads the Featherfolk Brigade is having a meeting with Peklir Im, and it seems Peklir Im has convinced him to give him command of a group of soldiers to track down the fortress city about that Luan visited to destroy all the Freyrlings. And the Quetzal in question also goes on about how very evil, like, speciesist he is, and how he thinks everything should be about the lizard folk and all that. And we find out very clearly that this is all that the entire plot with Peklir Im is all about the what was the name of the company?
Jungle Tales.
Jungle Tales taking control from the Nears' company. Okay.
Forgotten Wing.
Yeah, Forgotten Wings. Oh my god, I'm sorry. I'm also trying. I'm being distracted. Go ahead. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I thought that was a really important part. There was so much fun stuff happened this chapter that it's kind of overshadowed. I hate that the N is gone from Agelum, whatever.
Agelum is
yeah,
how I'm pronouncing it because
Agelum.
no, Agelum. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, and there was a lot of like really fun small stuff, like the implication that they're getting their power back from the gods. Lots of different implications throughout the chapter. Yeah, I thought it was really, really fun. Laughed a lot, and yeah, great chapter.
Okay. Do we have another person, another volunteer to go? Who's going up?
Was it so? I had to react to the Baleros part. It was Mark. Is that who just spoke?
Mark?
Who was that?
That's
Mark.
me.
Hi, Mark.
Okay.
Go ahead. Tell us what you thought of the chapter.
Yeah, so the Baleros part, I actually really like that we're getting an explanation. Well, not really an explanation, but the start of one as to why the Fairlings are being attacked. And I don't know if I like that it's because of the lizard folk trying to reestablish their great company. But I thought we got a really nice lore dump in this chapter from Az and Bell as well.
Okay. Okay. That sounds great. I see Nabisco. So Nabisco, did you want to say something?
Yeah. So overall, I thought the chapter was pretty good. Parts of it didn't really land too hard for me. Like, I find it hard to care about Mons when we haven't really gotten much from her in a while. So her entire part just was like, okay, Valtercia is fun. So that one, that spiced up that part a bit. I really like seeing Liscor again. It feels like it's been a while since we've had that as a primary setting.
It's been 4 or 5 months in real world time.
Yeah, so it's good. It's good to be back, even for the short amount of time that we were back. Really nice to see finally some movement on Trey and Amerys, because that's been sitting for like the entire volume and basically not much progress with that plot line. So it's nice to see that something's happening there. And I think, yeah, there's a lot of that sort of cleanup feel in this chapter where it's kind of like, hey, these plots exist still, with Baleros coming back into play in this volume. Like, we've had Luan a bit, but like getting back to mainland Baleros is pretty new for this volume. So yeah, it had that sort of feel where we're just sort of touching on a bunch of stuff.
Okay.
And sort of bringing some plot lines back into play when they've been mostly
they've been
dormant.
a little bit far of a field. Okay, we're gonna wrap up this section, and I'm just gonna end it with saying and Dado, I see a lot of like things that will intersect with the questions people have asked, so we're gonna hold off on some of the reactions. So don't worry about it. We'll get to them. Blue, you need to ping somebody if you want a question to be added to the list. He showed up late. What was the... Yeah, my reaction to this whole thing. I didn't say anything, but this felt like a pirate trying... what's the thing from the West Wing about Fridays being... what newspapers do, where everybody dumps this news on the Friday because nobody reads the newspaper? Trash day. Take out the trash day. So this felt like Pirates' version of Take Out the Trash Day. They dumped as many plot lines as possible with lots of juicy details and lots of interesting lore dumps, and they posted it but none of it really fit into the narrative. So they've done this before. They put it all together and then they hide the biggest and most important stuff in smaller subsections that are either seem like not a big deal or are a big deal, and then dump it right on top of us and watch the terror and screaming and crying and weeping as they laugh and cackle from the background. I know you, pirate. I see you. Okay. So, that was my reaction. Pirate's attempt to manipulate my emotions is not successful. I mean, because the Baleros thing didn't happen, right, guys? It's not happening. The Fairlings are not dying. Otherwise, we riot, and Lynna and I burn down the server. Just so we're clear, we're going to burn down the server, right, everybody? Do I get some agreements? No? All right.
I got it.
Okay, so let's move on to the next subsection of today's discussion. Where the hell are we going to next? We did reactions, we did...
So the next question in the queue would be,
yeah.
in regards to the plot,
Wait,
would
hang
be,
on. I do have the questions you put in the document, so we'll start with there.
yes, it would be the first one, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so Mark Tech, you asked which plot thread related to reviving Erin is your favorite. Az gave us a pretty good outline with the cryo magic in this chapter, with cryo magic, the antidote, and the thread. I'm really excited to see. You said personally, I'm pretty excited to see how Ryoka convinces Riss to give her the scroll of resurrection, or what she'll trade for. As a comment, as an addition to this question, what did you guys think of the way Azkraj laid out the particular needs of Erin? What the pieces that need to happen for Erin to be revived, and also his offhand comment about how her body needs to be in the inn, as does her soul. Does anyone want to speak? Anyone? No one? Pope?
So I have something, it's a small thing. I think
Go ahead.
in regards to the question of what my favorite part is, it's probably going to be the fact that they need to have Erin's soul and her body in the same place, and Az assumes that her soul is still in Israel, in the inn, when it's on the opposite side of the earth. So that means that either Erin is going to have to leave Kel in the dead world, which is incredibly dangerous, or they're going to have to risk taking her body all the way to Kel.
Which sets up quite a journey for Erin,
I'm very sure there'll be some sort of crossover with pirates in that.
There's another aspect of it that I really enjoy, is that they lined it up, like Azkraj lined it up. So the cryo revival needs to happen, the poison needs to happen, the body and soul need to be in the right place, and with all of that, we also have the comment from Bellavere that there is something missing. Even with all of that, even with the spirit thread, there is still something missing. And we don't know where it will come from or how it will happen. And it's because she sees the whole of it. So that makes... go ahead. Astera, did you want to say something?
No, I was going to wait till you finish.
Okay, go ahead, say something. You're good.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm looking for people to speak and no one is
Okay. So I guess in terms of like repeating everything that Erin needs to be revived, a little bit repetitive, but it's probably good to have just the reminder so we can keep track of the pieces kind of coming into play. It is interesting that we are missing something. We still don't know what it is. So maybe the witches with Lakin will kind of come into play where they'll like divine what's missing, like they did for the cure. Mm-hmm. I assume that Azkraj is going to pass that information to Feto, and then Feto will somehow figure out what it is they're missing. The thing that I was kind of unclear about was the soul thread. Is that supposed to take the place of the mushroom or whatever it is that they're looking for? Like, what was the point of the soul thread?
I think it was it was essentially the spirit bonded object that they were looking for, and the thing that they were looking for, of course, Bellavere has, because of course it's Bellavere. She's the Stitch Witch. She knows where everything is. She's the secret holder of the universe. But it is interesting to see that. Okay, unless somebody has anything, or Mark, do you want to add something to the conversation? Because it was your question.
I guess I'd like to say that I really am curious about what Ryoka's going to do with Reeves. Like, that is probably one of my favorite plot lines right now, which may be a controversial opinion, but I don't know. I just really like where Ryoka's character has gone since Volume 1, so I'm curious to see what she does.
Okay, that's good. We're gonna move on to the next.
Sorry. I put myself in the. I pinged Dado, but just to say, I think the last thing is going to come from the Fellowship, just because it's the. I just think it's the cliche Fellowship thing that they went off to find a small person who got completely distracted and are going to come in at the last moment to save the day. With possibly an army of ghosts, but maybe just something to help ghosts.
Okay. For those who are coming in or returning, if you want to speak, You can just ping Dado or myself in the reaction and question section, and we'll get to you. If you have a particular reaction to to a comment or a question, but you don't want to speak, you can just type it in there. Dado is directing traffic for us today. He's my buddy. So there we go. And we're going to move on to the next question, which is...
Oh, wait, hold on.
Excuse me?
So Dicekinator has the reaction. Thought for this question is, what has Feto himself managed towards this cure?
That's a good question, except I don't fucking know. Like, does anyone know?
So far, it seems like he's done some work with the cryomancy. That's what it seems like. His thing is that he's been focusing with all. What does he have, like frosted ghouls or something?
Okay, and did someone else want to say something? Just ping.
Was Astrid speaking?
Asteria, did you want to say something? Oh, there you go. Ask Asteria.
Yeah, he has the whole connection to the dead. Nobody would even know that, like, this was a major thing that we needed to do without Feto starting to connect the pieces, right? Everybody was working on it separately, and Feto was like, hey, I need X, Y, and Z. He's the connector link between everybody.
Yeah,
he's the one who got everyone.
That's fair.
Please let her finish, and if you want to speak.
Okay. No, I'm done. He's fine. He's fine.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you had tailed off, so sorry. I was saying that he had gotten that, but he got this whole experiment thing set up and all of that business going, and I haven't seen anything come out of that, which is why I was asking him, which is why I asked the question.
Go ahead and respond to Asteria, because you said you want to.
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, all right. Yes, please keep the reaction and question channel clear of anything except for talking about this stuff. Sorry, asking questions or asking for time to speak. Okay.
So we should move on to the next question.
Yeah, we're moving on to the next question. Okay. Discinator actually asked this. Has the world, or at least Liscor, moved past needing Erin? Liscor seems to have taken up her causes as their own, and done so pretty effectively. Where will she put her efforts once she's revived?
Yeah, one thing I was even surprised by myself, just data speaking, by the way, is that they even implied a rule in the brochure that said no killing goblins, which I did not expect them to actually put that in there. Because it wasn't that long ago that they didn't help the goblins when they were defending the city. So I'm a bit surprised they have that in the brochure itself.
Okay. Mr. Europe, you had a reaction?
From a purely, obviously it's fun that some of the council members snuck it in under Liscor's nose, or under Lissam's nose. But the other interpretation is the practical thing that they just found out during the Belevier fight that there's a giant army of goblins up in the North Mountains, and it's probably best not to go around and just killing them, since they're the only goblins around right now, and they don't have they don't have a reason to attack Liscor, or an inclination to do so. So purely from a practical perspective, like from the cynical point of view, no killing goblins is actually a pretty good viewpoint for Liscor right now when their army is out.
So Vizier, his opinion is that he believes that Erin will move up to world stage stuff. I know you can't speak, Vizier, but if you want to elaborate a little bit on that, put it into the reactions channel for us. Anybody else?
Yeah, I have something. So I believe what Erin will do when she gets revived is she's basically going to be a harbinger for all the shit that's going to come with the dead gods. I mean, Ryoka has a pretty good idea, but Ryoka has not much of a clue what's happening in the dead world. She doesn't know that all these things are happening and how exactly the dead gods are getting in. And I feel like Erin's going to be the harbinger of what's to come, and I don't know exactly who she would tell, because she might not even be able to tell most of the people she knows, because the world might prevent her ever how that shit works. but I think it'll also start leading into how some of the humans are, and some of the other Earthers are pawns of the gods. How like what is it? What's his name? I can't remember. Who's the blind guy?
Lacan. Yeah, Lacan.
Yeah, he's working with the god of kings, and then we have the god of magic or like information in Winstram, and we have all of these things. And Erin will basically serve as the harbinger, and I think she'll also be working on a lot of what she'll be a witch probably or something after she gets back. So I think she'll be we'll see a lot more of the magical food aspect that she was working on up until she died.
Asir, you had something to say about all this?
I just sort of going off of what Dado's saying, it's really going to depend on what her role is, right? She's not a general, she's not a epic leader of leading them on to, the battlefield. So if her role is more support, I could definitely see her staying in Liscor and like people coming to her. It's really going to depend on what role she takes after she comes back from the dead and how much she remembers. But she definitely could still have a role with Liscor. I mean, it might be that Liscor is like the point that they start attacking all the gods from, and whatever.
Okay. And yeah, Dado, I did tell Visir to put it in, but I guess he missed the part where you put a 4-mana out for him.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if it was like a reaction, because if you guys want me or want us to just say something, if you guys don't want to talk and you have something to message, just put reaction next to what you want.
Yeah. It works very well. We're keeping on top of it. Hopefully, my personal opinion.
Oshi, are you there?
Oh my god, the mic went off. Sorry. My personal opinion of all of this is that, as far as Erin is concerned, we're talking about somebody who wanted everyone around her to succeed and then to come back. I am hating myself for this, and Dragoness, you win. I know you're not here, but let's remember the example of Rabbit Eater. That is, aside from the more personal aspects of the relationship, that is really how she views all of her guests as friends who will always have a home at the inn. They may be out there like spreading the inn's gospel, being kind, compassionate people, but the idea is always going to be that they will come back and that she will help them be more. The point is for her to help them become more of what they are, and for them to come back and share who they are with Erin, right? So I don't think she needs to grow on the world stage or become something else. She'll just keep being herself, and it will just connect differently with the people who are growing. It's everyone else around her who has to grow. Erin's not really, the way it's set up. It's not necessarily Erin like stepping it up. It's just other people taking up more space that she's made for them, and she was hoping that they would take up. She does need to, yes, Assyria, I agree on the maturity front. That's a whole nother discussion for another day. We might do that next Tuesday.
Dicinator wants to react.
Yep. So, two things. One, I thought I was curious. So, the reason why that's the question is one that I was kind of curious what people thought of the idea that sort of the Erin shenanigans are no longer sort of necessary for Liscor's growth in the way that they were. And it sounds like it's true because I haven't heard anyone saying she's going to keep on meddling in Liscor. And I really like, and have actually thought a little bit about the thing that I think Oshi was just saying about her being the hub of this thing. I actually have been thinking of her as the Spider of Israel, because she has this web centered at the inn and these adventurers and guests going out through the world, and these threads are how she kind of interacts with the world and influences things, and they come back. The vibrations information come back to her. So that was it.
Okay. Here's a question from Vesir, since it ties into this one. Will the inn also get a holy aura along with the magical aura it already has after Pawn has been treating it as a pilgrimage spot? I'm going to say no, but I mean, you never know. Pirate does tend to use interesting ways of applying skills and things, and we really don't understand how the location skills might grow, considering a lot of them seem to be about the inn getting more famous, and
Yeah.
it might pick something up. Does anyone have a reaction to this?
Don't forget that the inn is a landmark already.
It is a landmark already, but landmarks can change in significance and alter. So there's always a chance that the skill changes to something else. It might be landmark holy sanctuary. I don't know, something like that. That was an interesting little tidbit. I like that. Thank you, Vasir. All right. Okay, moving on to the next question on our list. We have Mr. Europe. The Agelum seem to be getting stronger with the return of the gods. If they decide to betray the Lucifin and join up, which god would they primarily join? Now, before we get into this question, I'm going to just say this right now. I don't think it necessarily has to do with the gods. I still believe it might be a more natural thing, and it might even have it something to do with Pawn and his bringing of religion. Does anyone have an idea about this? It ties into the before I start, it ties into the quote. I know, but I had Hyria send someone to watch me. I didn't feel poorly at all. I felt better this last months, really, than I have since before Curulac, damn him. And I'm not the only one, am I, Uzine? This is a quote from the chapter, one of the Agelum saying that they feel better.
So my reaction to this is, I think it could be Pawn. I think it could also be the Earthers. It wasn't that long ago where Rear Blighted, they opened up another portal to Earth or whatever and brought in a bunch of people. It could be that. It could be a multitude of things. We had multiple events. It could have been the King of the Fae returning, or maybe even closing the doors. Even that could have assisted them. I have no clue.
Hang on. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if I had to choose a god, if I had to look out of the gods that we've seen, I think I'd maybe pick the Dancing Man. I know we haven't seen much, but I think it's hypothesized that he's like the god of like love or laughter or something, and that kind of seems to resonate with the angels from what I've seen.
Okay. Before Mr. Europe goes, before Mr. Europe goes, Jake responded, it could also be Aaron sending that text message out, meaning the gods are stronger and thus the Agelum are stronger. Mr. Europe, you had something to say.
Yeah, the reason why I think it's very obvious that it isn't Pawn is that Pawn started his religion and did all his, started the heaven a long time ago, like nearly half a year ago by this point. Whereas the month or months is directly to the solstice, which means I suppose it could be Oberon, but I mean, given that they're angels, basically, I think it's personally a lot more likely that it's tying to some kind of divine or faith-based thing,
maybe,
which has very much closer to the gods.
Maybe, but I argue that the Agelum are presented as being people who draw power from strong emotion, from righteousness, from happiness. And you know what's been happening lately that has a lot more righteousness and happiness? All the stuff from Erin died, and all her friends went on adventures. And they happened to all coincide with the same time. It's a little bit of a stretch, but honestly, I'm still skeptical that the Agelum are so deeply tied to the gods because they existed before, after the gods were gone, and they don't remember the gods any more than the Lucifin do. So races are separate from gods, and it's difficult for me to think of it as that. Anyone? Discinator?
Yeah.
I had still something to say.
Okay.
Before I was the reason why I thought up this question was that I thought of them maybe joining Casigna, as the goddess of death, as because I think the Valkyrie motif is cool. But yeah, they're just regarding their like divinity. I think personally, my theory, based on what they said about Krellers and stuff, and how they could fight against the Krellers, and how that wasn't a problem, but goblins were a problem. My super crack theory is that they could fight the Krellers because the Agelum use miracles rather than magic, which goes through magic resistance, but goblins who have a hate boner for gods are resistant to them. And that's why I think they use miracles, and that's why I think they're getting stronger with more gods having more power and spreading more divinity around.
Disconnect.
Anyway, that's it.
You're up.
All right. So I had two thoughts about this. Unfortunately, sorry, neither of them are directly gods. One of them is, however, the solstice ritual is that there's a bunch more heroes around. We think, probably, if there's more heroes been summoned, and I feel like they might be. There's some chance that they're connected to that rise. There were heroes from the earlier summoning, but I presume not as many because more Earthers were summoned. And the other thing is that world events are moving. There's wars are being fought. They're in a greater abundance.
Movements, slaves being killed.
Right, slavers being killed. Yeah. Flos is on the march, and there are wars. Celt is moving out and doing things on behalf of other nations. There's crusades. There's Elendamus' own war, which has been heating up the past few months. So I feel like that just the world event might be the Sturm and Drang of world events crashing and burning, as opposed to being in this kind of uneasy stability. May have something to do with that.
This is a much better thought out response to exactly what I was thinking, because it seems too iffy to be connected to gods, but this is so real. More heroes, more crusades, more stuff in the air, and the Agelum are recovering from their injuries. Disconnect, you had a second part to your response?
No, that was the second part. The first one was specifically I had this theory that heroes being summoned, like actual people with hero classes. That was the first one. I actually think that's a little less interesting, personally, than the idea than the second part, which is why I spent longer on it, which was just world events.
One of the theories that was thrown around by Mr. Wiggles in Patreon spoilers chat was that while the Lucifin represent the magical version of their twinned races, where they have a lot of power and magic, the Agelum might represent the more physical way of doing things. It's not necessarily that they worked through miracles. They might have been powerful physically, which is why they are so badly harmed, but because Curulac might have taken away that power, that physical power. And when they did so, they might have protected the Lucifin from the damage and been like the pocket thing. Dado, do we have some people?
Yeah, I wanted to say something first, then it'd be Asteria. I know people keep saying that the angels are like divine or naturally holy, or like the miracles. In my opinion, I see them as just another immortal race. I don't think they're inherently, serving the gods. I think at one point, groups of angels probably did serve the gods like any other race would have served gods at the time. But they don't inherently start out. I see them, as the opinion of they are the warriors, and then the Lucifin are more better with magic, and that they're just another race. They're not inherently holy. It's just that they're getting and they feed off happiness. And I think the reason they're getting stronger is due to all of the inventions and all the things that are kind of giving more prosperity to people around the world, especially music. Like there's been a lot of music coming out all of a sudden for
Oh my god, I didn't even consider that. You're right. There's plays, there's music, there's a sense of joy in the air, and they kind of bask in that. Holy TV! Oh my god,
all right.
I forgot TV.
Next person would be Asteria.
I was just going to say, the angels, I can't pronounce the actual name.
Agelum.
I think the only reason that their physical bodies are weak is because they're injured, right? They're like the deathless, where they're still recovering from
Yes.
whatever happened during that Goblins War.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like really the main thing that separates them, right, is the fact that the demon, the Lucifin, feed on the body, whereas the angels feed or bask in these emotions. I think the rising emotion, the stuff that you're describing, is actually really interesting. But I think really what it comes down to is that they were somehow deeply injured during that goblins blowout, and then whatever it is that they need to recover just isn't there. And I think it was mana, right? So wouldn't that tie to the waning, the fact that the magic is basically dying in the world, like what's going on with the witches, the gnolls somewhat, though maybe the gnolls is like a separate thing, but just like the older races that tie into that natural nature magic kind of stuff. That's what I was seeing the connection as, was why they were not recovering as much.
Okay. Oh,
Okay.
hang on a second. I have a thing. I think you said that there's less. I don't think that's true, because I remember Terriarch mentioning that the potential of the world hasn't gone down. It's more that there hasn't been a strong enough challenge for the world to, like, remember like the Krellar Wars, where there would be a challenge, people would rise up, and the successive generations would be stronger. Which,
But not as
go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
You can respond.
Well, not necessarily like the strength of people, like that's something. But remember how there was just this discussion about like with the witches and some of the other races, that this idea of whatever it is that they're like this type of magic that they use, like that's disappearing out of the world, right? This dichotomy between natural wild magic versus the organized whatever.
I think when you're looking at witches and druids, it is a fading of their time. It's like the natural progression of the world from a purely wild and sort of less civil, not less settled area to more settled and more controlled. The druids faded as quote unquote nature faded, as the large forests, as their homes were consumed.
So that's what I was thinking was maybe was tying to the angels as well.
But
like
the
maybe the
angels
Lucifin
are explicitly physically harmed by what Curulac did to them during the 100 Days War.
But like the reason that they're not recovering as fast, like whatever it is that's what I was thinking.
I'm agreeing with Wiggles, who mentioned in the chat that it's likely within the last 200 or 300 years, which isn't a lot of time for immortals, especially if they've taken like deep-seated injuries. I think it would be the equivalent. It's just like with the Deathless. The Deathless spent a century like cocooned, and they got woken up, but they aren't any better, like significantly better, are they? They still need hundreds of years to heal. Immortals, by their very nature, are not designed to heal in the same way that we are. We're designed to get cut up and our body regenerates, because we only have a short time. Eventually we'll stop regenerating as well and we'll die. But an immortal is what they are, and restoring that body is very difficult.
That was actually a quick question that I had. What's the difference between like the immortals and like the other, like I always thought of the immortals as like beings outside of the wandering in world. Like, are the immortals really just other races that there's not as many of, or are they? Yeah.
Based on my interpretation of it so far, immortals are people who basically can't die from old age, and the class system sees them differently. Because they can't die from age, they would naturally have an advantage against people that aren't that people, because people like humans, they will die over time unless they get certain skills or they use certain things, and they're unlikely to reach the higher levels due to their natural lifespan. And I think the system views this as unfair, so it doesn't exactly give them it like a lot of the immortals. We don't know if every immortal is like this, but so far every immortal we've seen doesn't have access to the class.
I'm going to cut you off. We pretty much spent a lot of time on this, so
I know
we're not going to get to enough questions. So I'm going to move on. Dado asked, Dado asked, up until this moment, Curulac of 100 Days has been barely mentioned, but in this chapter they were mentioned to have possibly been at fault for the lesser population of Lucifin and Agelum. What is the question here, Dado? I don't understand. What's the question here?
Oh, I'm sorry. I probably deleted that out. So
Okay.
my question is just how strong do you guys think? Because a lot of the Goblin Kings, like Velen, was seemed to be decently strong. Like didn't have to shake the other kingdoms, but not enough to take on like I didn't think he'd be strong enough to take on like immortal races. Do you guys think that in the order the Goblin King itself as a class or is so powerful that it could literally like you could take on immortals? It seems it even said that Riversea it was remembers them and has nightmares about the Goblin Kings.
Okay.
Mr. Europe has a reaction.
First of all, this is why I think this is where my miracle theory comes from. That they work on miracles and goblins specifically work against that. But secondly, Goblin Kings are supposed to be like this apocalyptic event, like not like Kreller War apocalyptic, but like mini apocalyptic event, like these huge, incredibly dangerous, just going around destroying everything until they're finally like burnt out or stopped. And the immortal, Terry keeps saying that everything, like he's one of the by far the strongest immortal around that we've seen, and he keeps saying that like just I could die facing just some mortals at any time. Like he can't go attack Ascrash, which is just one archmage, and the goblin because there's a small chance that he'll die. But Goblin Kings come with like what was that Velen's Goblin Lord mage who dueled Cern? Imagine like lots of those. Yeah.
I believe it was a shaman. Yeah, I don't remember his name right now.
Yeah, but imagine, and Velen was also supposed to not have the support of the Goblin Island Lords. Imagine Curulac coming in with like 4 of those people of that power and huge armies as well as island support. It would like immortal or not, that's a huge threat.
Okay, we're gonna. I'm sorry, disconnect. We're gonna move on from the Agelum and the Goblin Kings for now. That was a lot of discussion on the topic. Lenu asks, "What can be? Sorry, not that one. Will we see Amerys out of imprisonment in the time scale of the next few chapters?" This was asked by more than a few people. All they want to know is, do you guys think Amerys is going to escape? We also got a question from Blues as a corollary to this. Does Ghazi have a plan to cause chaos or get revenge on Winstram while covering the escape of Amerys and I assume Trey? What do you guys think? What's going to happen with Amerys and Trey?
Well, I have an opinion. In regards to her getting stopped, I don't think the way that Eldovin has been, or Terry basically, has been acting, I don't think he would stop Amerys because he would intervene if it was like, an army was preying maybe on a weaker amount of people or something like that. He might have Winstram intervene if it helps their reputation. But he also kind of seems like he would stay neutral. I don't see him keeping Amerys there. I think over time he'll just let her go, and the other archmages may fight him over this. But that's the way I see Eldovin going about. They might threaten her with removing her from Winstram reputation. Like she is no longer considered part of Winstram, but I don't see him actually stopping her.
Do you guys think she's going to have to fight her way out of Winstram, or do you think she'll slip away Batman style with Trey acting as Batman because, I don't know. You guys want Trey to be Batman? I don't know. Anyone?
We also haven't seen anything. There's supposed to be a plan. Did they expect to go into Winstram with no plan on how to get out?
That's Blue's question. Do you think Ghazi is going to attack Winstram or sneak in? I'm thinking Mission Impossible style. They sneak in and cut her out, and then they just leave. She's got to be in serious. I mean, she's literally What's that guy who ate people? You remember how he was in a cage? His face was cut, like, chained up and all that. It's it's odd the way it's set up. And we never really... Okay. I think... Yeah, I think at this point, we're going to ask a couple of lightning round questions. Hold on a second. I have to get there. So we have... do you guys think Erin will get her door back, or does it now belong to the city? Anyone? My personal opinion is, of course, she'll get her door back. It's her door.
She'll get it back.
It's her it's her territory. It's cool. What do you think Torin thinks of zombie Erin? By the way, zombie Erin is ridiculously creepy. Does anyone else think?
She's cute.
Oh God, what the fuck? BZM3R reactions. I think the new inn will be built around where the door is right now, i.e. in Liscor's Plaza. Now that would be interesting, wouldn't it? Like, you have the entire inn built either to the side or within the scope of it. I mean, the inn is technically still, like, physically there where it is. I don't know. The door is going to be a lot of fun to argue over. I wanted to ask this myself, but what do you guys think of Seborn following and observing the ants? Do you think he's found his faith? What is he looking for? Do you think others are doing that? Do you think Pon is proselytizing in any way? My opinion is, I think that is the most significant change that's happened yet, because it means outside of the Antinium there is someone else. Even if they can't speak about gods, they can speak about heaven. And this might be a loophole in the whole interdiction against gods.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Well, you don't necessarily need to have a god to have a religion, and that is the loophole. That's basically they'd be getting the holy classes, but they don't have a specific god. It's more about themselves and getting redemption.
Here's the devil's advocate. I get this a lot from people. Is that there is a god, because there's this one line where in volume 1 where he drops down to his knees when Pon finally realizes there's a heaven and that a god was born. I swear to God, I want to slap everybody who says something, because volume 1 is not the most accurate.
It could also, the god itself could not really be a specific god. It could be the Intinium as a hive mind. Like, all the souls that go to heaven become part of a god, or like heaven itself, and that is God.
The way they frame it, it's like everybody has this heaven place where they get to be together, and now they're accepting pets and peoples and Jivan. Jivan says Torin is going to sue Az for stealing his zombie Erin idea. Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, he did I believe he did have that as an idea first. And when he was in the dungeons.
Yeah, Discinator says, I don't think Seborn really knows what he's looking for, but he thinks Pon can help him figure it out. Now, if he succeeds, I mean, it is an interesting, like, what the fuck is going on here? What about volume 2, Mr. Rat? You're going to have to speak if you want me to know what you're
Also, Seborn having the religion, he's a pretty high-level adventurer. If he goes out, when him and Jirako and Moore start going adventuring again, he might actually spread the religion to other people.
All right, fine. I'm getting a lot of pushback. Apparently, the line I'm referring to is in volume 2. I don't care if it's in volume 2. It's one line. It was clearly a stylized way of speaking. It is not the be-all end of the world. The way everything has been processed, the way the person who came back from heaven talked about it, there wasn't a god. There wasn't someone to greet Yellow Spatters and tell him that, worship me. There was no god. Stop saying there was a god. Hello, Lynette. How did your... Okay, now. Does anybody else want to say something before we move on?
There is, I think, one more line that points to maybe there being a god figure behind the Antinium, which is Tamaroth in Volume 7 referring to the child as a separate entity from one of the 6 main gods that we know about.
The child was something else, though, wasn't it?
I don't think it was ever clarified what the child was.
There is
I thought the
no
child
clarity.
was in. I thought the child was the thing in rear.
There is no clarity on what child the gods are referring to. That is all I will say on the subject, and let's move on because I'm right. You guys are wrong.
Asteria has a reaction.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Asteria.
I think don't forget that. So my thought on the religion aspect is maybe the ants and I guess Seborn don't have a god because like someone, I don't forget who it was, they pointed it out where like places like China and some of these other countries, they have what we kind of think of as religion, but not really gods per se, but they're still very.
You're thinking of non-Western,
like there's still
non-Abrahamic traditions where
yeah, like there's still belief systems, but they don't really attribute things to gods and things. So maybe the ant religion is kind of more like that, where
ancestor
they
worship
have these
or
yeah,
some kind of
that
philosophical
exactly
ideal. Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, and Jeevan also put down. He said, "Well, when that first started, Pawn was still basically." He said that Pawn was basically still figuring out his religion, and at that point, there might have been the beginnings of a god when Pawn didn't really have an understanding of his own faith yet, and that might have changed later.
Yeah. The other thing to consider, Assyria, to clarify some of the more Eastern religions, is so Hinduism and Buddhism are essentially all about the philosophical ideas about the cycle of the universe and how we can break the chain, because there's an essential belief in the reincarnation of the soul, and that in order to break away from that reincarnation, Hinduism looks towards improving, like the soul improves it can't sort of improve its, like that's the basis of caste system. It's a little complicated. And then we look at, say, Buddhism, where it's all about leaving, like achieving nirvana and disconnecting from the world to the point where you achieve enlightenment, and in the process break away from the cycle of reincarnation. There's a lot of complexity to Hinduism and how it's practiced versus the philosophical underpinnings. You also have to look at Taoism and the Shintoism. There's a lot of animist traditions as well that are different. Dado, you want to say something?
No, Dicekinator has a reaction.
Okay.
So I found the in 525 there's a quote, and so we pray not for a god, not because we are chosen or beloved, we are alone. And later he goes, however I believe in heaven, etc. If there's no place for us, we'll build it ourselves.
Right.
So that's as a point that Pawn at least has moved on from thinking that there's necessarily a god there, and that was all.
Okay.
I want to jump in real quickly and just say how I love how everybody turns to the text and we actually do control find and look for proof of all of our interpretations.
Well, where else are we gonna look for?
I love it. I just saying I love how everyone's using all of their reference knowledge that they learned in high school and college.
Where else are we gonna look for?
I love it. Or
let's continue the lightning round of questions. We have actually I think that might have been it. We talked about Baleros. We talked about Taurus. Okay, so I have a couple of interesting points from the chapter myself. I wanted to keep. Actually, I guess now's a good time. So I'm going to address the elephant in the room. At the Ryoka part of the chapter before we end. Nobody else speaks. This is just going to be me, and we're just going to go through it very quickly. So during that scene, it's implied that Ryoka might be in a compromised situation with the other knights. Now, there is no indication that this compromised situation is sexual in any nature, but there has been speculation and a lot of vigorous debate about its nature and how it could be and whether it's a good subsection or not. I'm going to say this because I don't know if Pirate's going to slam me for it later, but Pirate has been soliciting, has been watching a lot of videos about fan reactions and stuff. And one of the things they talked about was queer baiting. And I got the distinct impression that this is Pirate and they did check they did ask a bunch of people, is this queer baiting, before they posted it. Is that this was just them trolling the fuck out of all of us. It's that is the only comment I have on this. That's it. We're gonna move on. Let's see. We got direct. Okay, so during the Liscor sections, did anyone else get surprised by how much bigger Liscor sounded for whatever reason? Did it feel like it was larger to you? Because I got this distinctive sense that like, for example, Menelet's Liscor Hunted, it was pretty cool, right? There are all these new organizations starting up. Silverin is now part of the Cleaners Guild. There is a larger square. There was talk of walls going up and constant shifts by Hexel. I think it's Hexel, his name is. The architect. Did Liscor feel bigger to anybody else, or was that just me?
Pretty sure it is canonically bigger, considering they've been expanding.
No.
But
I
yeah,
meant in a more like it felt more expansive in a sense of like,
yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was.
They were also pushing like months of development into one chapter. So, I mean, if we had compressed like 2 months of the spring chapters of what happened in Liscor and what like developed there into one chapter, suddenly it would suddenly seem a lot bigger and a lot more stuff going on.
Okay. Now, I have one other bit of information. So during the chapter, there is a section where they're going through crazy people who come through the portal that kind of powerful people that come through, or high level people who expect to be considered a interesting or like big deal sort of thing, and people go and of the list there's literally one that says, a mysterious young woman with a crystal hand and a map on the lam from bounty hunters. Okay, this is how do I say this? There are no reactions to that, but remember that the last time Pirate made a allusion to something like this, we got Starnall.
Oh, we got the Kara.
We got Kara, and we also got, you guys don't remember this, but the Starnall, the one, she was referenced once. Way before. It was a casual, like, side reference all about the... There are stories going on, and Pirate is, like, racing through the plot to get to, I honestly believe, Erin's revival.
I don't think that's an actual character. I think they're just generalizing, like, oh yeah, that sounds like that would be something that would happen.
That's a character?
I don't think that's going to be an actual character. I have a bet. I'll bet you $20. I'll bet you $20 that's not going to be a real character.
Name change. Bet a name change.
And I know Pirate might write this just to spite me, but I'm betting $20.
This is the worst part. If you bet me, Pirate will not.
Maybe it's the firefighter. Maybe it's the firefighter that we didn't get.
I'll bet you $20.
If maybe
why
it is
would a
the
firefighter have a crystal hand?
Okay, we're gonna close up the
lost in the fire.
All right, guys, calm down. Let's bring it down. So we're gonna close up the recorded portion of this. Thank you everyone for joining in. Pirate, if you're listening, why are you being so mean to me? Leave me alone. Let me have some fun. Give me a crystal hand. Because
one more part. We also need Crusader Ants. One more part for we need the Crusader Ants. We haven't seen them in forever.
Oh, that's not gonna happen.
Which?
That's not gonna happen. That would bring me too much joy. That would bring me too much joy, and that's not allowed.
Holy paladins.
But besides, the Crusader Ants are, I think, a little too depressing to think about. They're all still like angry over Erin, right? But yes, thank you guys for coming. It was a wonderful discussion. We'll have 30 minutes to an hour where we'll do a freeform discussion where you can complain about Ryoka all you want. Yep, thanks for coming, and that's the end of the recording. Bye, everybody!